Hello, my name is Elise Hatton and I am the Smart Hub Business Manager. It is my pleasure to welcome you to our Smart Hub May Lunch and Learn. Now, as you all know, Rockhampton Regional Council is very committed to supporting our business community and people in business like you. And one of the ways in which we demonstrate this support at the Smart Hub is to host these lunch and learns. Now, what we're trying to do is we're trying to bring expert knowledge from our community to the rest of our business community. And if you're on this call, your job today is to identify at least one thing that you can take away and implement in your business straight away. Now, as we all know, we've been living through some really extraordinary times, and COVID definitely has had a big impact on our teams and our staff and on HR in general. And so we're super excited about Debbie Dreaver, who's the expert who's joining us today, sharing around how to put human back into HR. And I think, Debbie, what you said is you're going to help us build a resilient, loyal workforce. Now, I think that is so important right now. I heard someone say the other day, and if you're in business, this will really resonate with you. As business owners, our job is to identify problems and to empower our teams to be able to solve those problems. And now the situation we're living through in business currently, we certainly have some interesting problems to solve, and having a great team to help us solve those problems is really, really important. So as I said, we have Debbie Dreaver, who's our expert for today. And Debbie comes to us with 30 years of experience in the finance services, training and human resources. And I'm sure you've all read the marketing, so I won't read her whole bio. As you know, I always try and share something quirky about our presenters. And the quirky fact that I'm going to share about Debbie is something that she just shared with us before. And I think we kind of can all relate to this. She said, she first said, I'm a practical person, and I think that's great. And then she said, and I don't like clutter. But her daughter says she actually, more accurately, she doesn't like everyone else's clutter. If it's her clutter, she can totally tolerate it. I think that's true for many of us. Debbie, thank you for joining us, and thank you for sharing all your knowledge around HR and how to build a resilient, loyal workforce. I'll hand over to you.
Thanks very much, Elise, and thanks for inviting me along today, and also to the Smart Hub. Just making sure you can hear me. Yep, that was a thumbs up. Great. Okay. Good. So this is a topic I'm really, really passionate about, the human side of HR and what we can do with employment and putting it back into HR. So really significant topic in today's climate. So we've got lots of disruption to employment. There's lots of changes to the employment landscape, including industrial relations and the way we work. That includes lots of fast-moving legislation, challenges of remote work, stand-downs, and also, unfortunately, redundancies. There's a lot of uncertainty about the future. So HR's response to this crisis could really change people's lives and also influence the risk of losing good people. So once things improve. Today, we're going to have a look at the impacts of the crisis and how it's affecting employment, ways that we can support our staff through focusing on the relationship side, and also delve into some strategies to maximise employee engagement to build that robust, resilient workforce. So since we're talking about employment today, what does it really mean? In basic terms, employment is, well, the law sees it as where there's an agreement between two parties where one, say A, pays the other, B, for their times and service. But in reality, employment is much more than that. So much more than a piece of paper or a contract, a handshake or a piece of paper. So it's about relationships between employer and workers or employees. So what I'm challenging you today is to refocus, and rather than thinking traditionally in the sense of HR as human resources, to think of it HR as that it's human relationships. So for all of us, employment is part of our human identity and our self-worth. And when that's challenged or taken away, put under threat, there's major changes, lots of cultural shifts can apply, and employees may respond with a variety of behaviours and emotions that can cause further disruption to the workplace. So the way we treat our people now will be a symbol of our care factor, and also go on to help with engagement and retention. So for this reason, it's really vital that we connect with our people, and also not only think about the people that are affected by the decisions in the sense of stand downs or redundancies, but also the people that actually affect the decisions, so the leaders in the organisation. So let's continue by having a look at the impacts. There's a lot going on. The impacts can be really far-reaching. So they're different for most of us. Some, there's more negative than positive. For others, the changing landscape has had the reverse effect. And there's some organisations or industries that have even seen major growth through this crisis. And all these bring about new challenges for HR to manage and find a solution to. When I say HR, I'm referring to not only the HR person, but it could be a manager, a supervisor, a team leader, or even the business owner. So we all have the responsibilities for employees, so it's a collectively description of HR. We'll begin by looking at employment. So, engagement. So engagement, it can be described as the commitment to the organisation and the drive to move and push the organisation forward. So some workplaces have seen impacts to engagement by way of reduced motivation, morale and trust and loyalty, all going down the drain. And in a recent study by Australian Human Resources Institute, which I'm a member of, it shows that HR professionals are dealing with employee engagement issues at a rate of an increase of more than 30%. So it's certainly a significant impact to business than it was before the crisis. Then employee connectedness. I can hardly say that. Connectedness. What that means is the social connection through work. So there's been forced isolation. We have to remember that it can damage the connections between both worker and employer, but also between peers, so employee to employee. Remote work is another contributing factor with varying results. So where others absolutely love it and are flourishing in it, there's others that absolutely hate it, and their experience with the whole remote working system has been poisoned. So it's all about finding a balance. So being connected with each other while not encroaching on personal space. So similarly to engagement, connectedness is another huge factor taking the time of HR professionals. And this time, more than 44% increase. Employee wellbeing, very, very important. And to use the description from the World Health Organization, wellbeing isn't just about not being sick or not having a disease or infirmity. It's about a complete physical, mental, and social wellbeing. We all understand, and I'm sure everyone is going through stress of increased levels, anxiety as well, and prolonged feelings of insecurity across the workforce or in specific pockets. So all these are having pressure on employee wellbeing. And particularly in businesses that are undergoing layoffs, there's increased or changed workloads for the remaining employees. The people that are left behind could be asked to do extra work, so they may be feeling disgruntled or angry. Why should I have to do this extra work? It's maybe not in my job description, or this is just all too much. They could also be procrastinating. So the impact could be that they're working longer hours to make up for their slower productivity. And this could also lead to burnout. So all of these things HR needs to consider. Some other psychological impacts, which may not have been thought of, or perhaps haven't even been heard of, is the first one, survivor syndrome. And that's when there's redundancies in the workplace. Employers are concerned about those people losing their jobs, and rightly so. And I'm certainly not understating the impact of that. But what survivor syndrome is reflecting on is the people that are left behind. So what about their wellbeing? So they can feel a complicated mix of emotions and guilt. They haven't suffered the same fate as their co-workers. And organisational psychologists have called this survivor syndrome or survivor guilt. Now, in the workplace, we spend a lot of time with our colleagues, and it's really common to develop some strong bonds and connections with those. So when we lose people in our workforce, those bonds cause trauma, and those connections can be a really powerful driver to employee engagement, well-being, and satisfaction at work. And I'm sure we've all heard the story about work spouses, and possibly the only reason sometimes people stay with an organisation. And severing bonds is typically a result of survivor syndrome. Lastly, on this slide, is cyber guilt. And that's a feeling of being able to work from home, whether you're allowed to or you have the capacity to, or whether you are forced to, but you're out of that harm's way. So you're feeling guilty because there are others perhaps in your workplace on the front line and you get to stay at home. Or perhaps even feeling guilty because you're in an industry that doesn't require you to be in harm's way, such as educators and healthcare. And there's been a steady increase, so more than 20% in performance management issues causing disruption. And they go between employee behaviours, losing productivity through procrastination, absenteeism. And some workers are working harder than others, perhaps deliberately. It's causing friction and team cohesion, and even assumptions of what people are and aren't doing. So particularly with remote work, when we're not sitting beside each other. So that's performance management. So I said earlier about not forgetting the people that are making the decisions as well. So our leaders are humans too, and they are hurting as well. So leaders are trying to manage remote work teams. They're making difficult decisions and having difficult conversations, and that's often without adequate experience. just by the sheer pace at which this thing came upon us. And they're playing a balancing act. So they're trying to keep the brand reputation stable. They're thinking about the bottom line, yet trying to show compassion and demonstrating resilience. So leaders are having their own set of impacts. Well, I said we'd talk about JobKeeper. So before we do, let's just go for a little short walk back in time. So historically, the impacts of employment in periods of downturn and growth generally follow these trends. And I know there can be changes to this, but this is general trends. So resignations would typically decrease during a downturn and rise during economic growth. Hiring usually slows when it's rough and picks up in times of growth. And job losses follow the opposite story. So the nation's response to the pandemic in the shape of the JobKeeper wage subsidy creates a unique climate for some employers. So where in the last slide we looked at downturns, typically workers are let go, JobKeeper has allowed some employers to maintain employment. So being able to afford to keep staff on that they otherwise may not have afforded. And when the economy picks up, everything's ready to go. Now with retention, downturn, there's few people willing to let their jobs go because of the instability. Some workers may feel forced to stay in the job, and that's really not conducive to good relationships. And the climate, and not only just, but including JobKeeper, may incentivise some to stay. So regardless of the long-term intention, and some people may associate their employer with a horrible time in their life and they just want to move on. So the whole situation is a trauma. And as HR is often referred to as business first responders, let's have a look now at how we can respond to this trauma. Lots of ways, and I think it's fair to say, in most cases, we've been focusing on the existence of jobs and not the quality of jobs. But now it's time to focus on how we can maximise engagement and also reduce the risk of losing that of quality talent. And I use the word of talent. It may sound a little bit generic, but I'm talking about all of your employees as a person, but also the talents that they bring with them. And any step we can make to improve any of these areas will improve relationships. So there's a lot of emotions, and I'm sure everyone is feeling them. We can respond by just recognising and acknowledging that the emotions that people are feeling are legitimate. So whether that's emotions of survivors or people that have been let go, we all respond to trauma differently. We all have different emotions and display them in different ways. So where one employee may not show much trauma from the circumstances, others may show a lot. So HR, we need to recognise and acknowledge that all of the emotions are legitimate. I think that's a really big one. Reassuring. So have someone available to discuss issues, concerns, with employees, and openly and visibly demonstrate to your employees the value of those that remain behind. Sometimes it's the simple things can be the best. They may that might mean a lot. Even showing gratitude. So saying thank you. So how much effort does it really take to say, oh, thank you, you did a great job. But even be more specific. Thank you, you did such a wonderful job. You helped me meet my deadline and got those diary notes together, for example. So the worker's going to feel validated, and also you'll be reminded that there's still good people in the world. Tapping into talents, passion, commitment, and creativity. So how well do you know your staff? And we've literally been in each other's homes for some time now with Zoom meetings and the like. So why not continue? It's a great time to get to know your staff even better. What are their passions? What do they want to achieve? And also, what are their talents? So mission and vision, focusing back on the work, refocus and get your staff involved about what the mission and vision are. And to get things up and running again, try to get the daily work patterns as soon as possible to re-establish the norms. And when settling in, make sure you give your employees time to settle in. And just don't expect them just to hit the ground running. Give them a little bit of allowance for that. And focus on building self-esteem through all of these practices and workforce capability. So wellbeing. So there's been lots of meetings, however you do video conferencing at your workplace. But a good thing to do is check-ins. So whether you have online meetings or have even been doing face-to-face, 4 questions can help you to determine the well-being of your team. So how you're feeling health-wise, emotionally, is there anything I need to know? And do you need anything from me? So this is building trust, offering reassurance, and going a lot towards their well-being. You can also actually do surveys, so short pulse surveys about well-being. So you could run an employee health and well-being survey, even do this regularly to have a look at any changes and be able to get onto those immediately. An employee assistance program is another great way that you can provide your employees with confidential counselling, and that's usually extended to their direct family as well. I know in Rocky, Centrecare is a local provider, but no matter where your business exists, there's someone that is an employee or an EAP provider, and that's something that's provided by the employer at no cost to the employee. Now we'll have a look at engagement and see how that's had a positive impact. Interestingly, Australia's got one of the most engaged workforces, about 23%, which is not all that high, is it? So I'd hate to see the rest of the world. I think we're in a lucky country. And we can have staff engaged or not engaged or disengaged. What we're trying to work towards is having our organisations have lots of commitment, passion and energy, lots of energy towards doing challenging tasks, people taking initiative and exceeding expectations as well. So everything we're doing as HR can help your people to be engaged, then help the organisation. So you think, well, I don't really know what motivates my team. Well, why don't you ask them? And the amount of strategies would be as unique and diverse as the people themselves. So, but a few just to start with: improving communication. So make sure you've got a purpose and provide information frequently and through a variety of mediums for individual preferences. Give opportunities for feedback and questions. So having people available, doing surveys, having little workshops, work teams. And very importantly, leading by example. So walk the talk, yes, are leaders committed? If employees see leaders walking the talk, they're more inclined to follow. And empowering employees. So asking for feedback and input. Ask about their own performance and how they think they can improve. And give a listening ear and take their opinions and act on them. Also, career advancement. So are there opportunities for development, professional development, training, promotions, acting, higher duties, that type of thing, that can use their competencies. And also rewards and recognition will play a big part in motivating employees. Remembering that rewards and recognition are different for different people, just like we respond to trauma and show different emotions and behaviours. So these can be tangible in the form of bonuses, technology, or positive culture, climate, that type of thing, as intangible benefits. So we can show these through providing reward structures. We can celebrate achievements. We can recognise people needs or service, lengths of service. And it also reinforces the contributions that they're making to our team, and also what the desired and the demonstrated performance is. So if you're going to go about building a rewards and recognition system, you'd have to make sure setting the goals, establishing them in the first place, making sure you involve employees, and having an understand why. So why are you actually doing this? What's the purpose? Make sure you track it, be responsible with your money, and also make sure that they are attainable. And another response, communication. So make sure it is clear and transparent, that you're really encouraging in your language, your body language as well. And the approach of we're all in this together, but yes, going back to that, there's lots of different responses. Be authentic. So everyone's feeling really vulnerable right now. Make sure you're empathetic, you're genuine in your tone, and even as an example, you may say, look, I get that this is going to have an impact on you. This is how I'm going to try to bridge that gap, but I understand that may not be enough. And finally, give hope. So telling people what they may not realise, that this is a temporary situation. So outplacement or career transition, this is a reactive response, but if needed, it allows a special service for the employee who's been displaced to transition into new work. So focus areas might be looking at what can you do really well, what do you enjoy, what brings you joy, finding those strengths, what are the skill gaps, and addressing that, of how they can pick up in that area, building resumes, helping with job applications, where to look for work, what type of industry, and also cover letters and selection criteria, along with interview coaching. And then, aside from the practical issues of returning to work, physical health and safety, remember that psychological well-being, which we've touched on. And there's a lot of people really sceptical or anxious about returning to work. And about nearly 50% of employees are worried actually about returning to the workplace or returning safely, so how they're going to get there. So all of these responses, whether they're proactive or a bit reactive, can also be of benefit with the addition of some strategies put in place. And these are things that you can do anytime. Some of your businesses may have all of this taken care of. Others might need a lot of work. Others might just be a little bit of tinkering. So policy manuals, very important for so many different reasons that you have your policies in place at the workplace. So new employees know what is expected of them, the standards of behaviour, and also they serve good for an employer if things go pear-shaped of employee expectations. Now, there's two flexible working arrangements, and family and domestic violence leave are quite more recent ones, additions to suggested policies in your workplace. There's actually no legislated law of you need exactly this, and this, but there's certainly recommended. Employee handbook's another thing. So it's a great place to start, particularly for your new starters, to have a variety of information at their fingertips to help them feel that connection and understanding of the business. Job descriptions, showing why what the purpose of their job is, what their duties are, and how to measure as well. Also helpful with recruitment. And then talent developing. So developing and nurturing your existing talent is a really great way to retain that talent, and we can achieve it through skills audit and also behavioural profiling. So skills audit's really about looking at the current skills. What do you need for each role, and who can do what, and what is needed by who. Particularly in the current climate, in the scenarios when we've been able to direct employees to do other duties, how could we do that if we didn't know what they were capable of in the first place? So possibly a bit late for that, but certainly well worth doing. It also helps with development needs and opportunities for progression. So once you find out the knowledge gaps, make sure you also include a good range of these things as well. So soft skills, the things that you actually can't touch. So is communication, flexibility, resilience. There's plenty of wellbeing programs available online by providers and even local regional providers that are really, really great. And policies with an exclamation mark is there's no sense, well, there's a better sense of having your policies but also using them as regular training, because you've got to show that you have regularly updated your employees. The second one is behavioural profiling, and this one's actually called a DISC assessment, where it looks at behaviours and personalities and what people are most comfortable and natural to do. And it looks at 4 different styles. And we can use behavioural profiling in lots of different scenarios. So it's going to uncover how your staff are likely to behave, how they communicate and like being communicated to, what motivates them, what demotivates them, what they're likely to avoid, and even the management style that they work best under. Do they have enough capacity to do a certain job? I think this is such a powerful tool, and to understand the strengths of your staff helps them to perform at their best. So it can just be used to learn more about one person, but also when combined, the assessments of multiple people or pairs or teams can be looked at together to see how people are going to react and work together. Obviously, for recruitment, it will help you make more informed decisions, and really useful in the case if you've got very even candidates and you're right at the pointy end of making a decision and you think, I just need a little bit more reassurance. Retention as well. So for all of those reasons, understanding the people, will be able to be flexible and know what's required to support them. And having a robust performance system in place. So performance appraisals, they could be tied to awards, recognition, probationary checks. So we all have people on probation, but what structure do you have around that? So how can you actually, if it was in a court of law, show evidence to say that you gave that new person a fair and reasonable go during their time of probation? But it's also there to support that person as well, giving them an opportunity to let you know how they're going. Do they need anything else? And also for managing underperformance as well. Structure in place about where they are and where they should be, and also getting your evidence in place. And as part of a recruitment strategy, you consider looking at workforce planning. So having a look at the future needs. So to get the right person in the right job at the right time. And also how we attract talent. So in summary, we've talked about relationships and the fact that employment is much more than the contract or a piece of paper, that we as HR, no matter what our title is, no matter if we're the head honcho, we're a senior leader, or we're a brand new supervisor, we have a HR department or not. HR should be driven through those relationships. We've looked at the impact of the current situation, the types of support that we can offer to our staff to show a caring approach and that we're thinking about their well-being and all those things. And lastly, the HR practices that we can implement to improve the risk of losing good people. And just before we go, just a little bit about me. So I run a small HR business. I do HR consulting, So all the things I've talked about today, policies, contracts, performance systems, recruitment, helping displaced workers due to redundancies or the like, and even helping people looking to improve their career or out of work, people who haven't been working for a long time. I have a particular interest in regional and remote women and helping them identifying their talents. So through an online program that I have called Value Your Talent. I really love to chat with you, and here's some ways that you can get in touch with me by email, phone and web. So thank you very much for listening, and I really trust it's been an informative session today, and it's given you the opportunity to focus on your people and understand the many benefits that putting human back into HR brings. Thanks very much.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Debbie. Now we have a little bit of time to take questions. If you have a question, just unmute yourself and please feel free to ask. I really, really like behavioural profiling as well, and I do like the DISC system. It is so insightful. It helps you see the things in your future and current employees that they might not even be aware of about themselves. It's really great to lead teams, to manage your own communication, to get the best out of those people. Really love it. Any questions?
And I might just add there, Elise, people would have heard of DISC. Well, this is still the same thing, but it's a bit more. So it's called extended DISC, where it breaks it down even further and uses a diamond to recognise that we aren't all just one style. There's like a combination of different styles.
Yeah.
And just knowing what your style is doesn't mean that you can't work within a different style, but it takes more energy. And that's a really powerful tool for employers to know as well. Yeah,
excellent. Do we have any questions or questions on Facebook? I know we're live on Facebook. Courtney can post some of the questions if we have any on Facebook in our comments section here.
Hi Deb, how you going?
I've been looking at you, Tamara. Is it a friendly, well, not that everyone is friendly, but a familiar face? Yes.
Back in the office as of yesterday. Thank you for that session. I was just curious as to those clients that you've been working with, whether there's any common themes most recently that you've had to talk people through.
Okay, so really regarding the current crisis, well, I can say that certainly recruitment, nothing's really been happening there, but it's more about the uncertainty around probably JobKeeper rules, which is a lot of in your end of town, being from Evans, Edwards and Associates, plug there. Yeah, so definitely uncertainties and changes and having to navigate the different legislation, I suppose. I really encourage anyone to log on to all the different types of webinars going on. As a member of HR Institute, I've got access to a lot of information about that, and even peak bodies such as the Chamber of Commerce and Industry Queensland, which is CCIQ, can assist with those really pointy end types of things. But I think if just be open and transparent with your staff. If you don't know exactly what's going on, you have to go and seek help, just so they know that you're not fobbing them off, I guess. But certainly every business is impacted in a different way.
And I think what you mentioned about communication and the little things, I think are are very critical, and that's what we find as well. It's usually those little things for each team member that just being available. I think that helps a lot.
Yeah, and remembering that some employees will just need that little bit of extra support over the other. We're all different. Everyone on the planet's different. So, yeah, being able to respond to the different needs of each employee.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Steve?
Yeah, just a quick one. I've been looking for I've developed my own, but I'm looking for a job description template that fits everything that you've talked about today. And I was wondering if there was any one that you could recommend or maybe even share with the group at all.
Well, I do have a job description template, yeah, and yeah, I'm happy to contact you after the session, Steve. That suits you.
Just unmuting. Thank you.
Any other questions? Debbie, what you were speaking about today reminds me of that old saying that your team wants to know that you care before they care about what you know. And I think that's a really good description of, it's really about the human relationships, not only with your team, but even with your customers at this time. And I think the game or the aim for every business is to make their team and their customers feel at the end of this that you really cared through this challenging time. And then when things start to move again as they are now, that they can come back to you and re-engage and do, be part of something bigger. So I think that's really, really critical. And all of the strategies you shared with us will help us do that. Do we have any other questions? We'll give it another minute. If we don't have any other questions, then we might thank Debbie. I'll just give it another few seconds. So if you have a question, now's a really good time to ask.
I'll just add, sorry, Leanne, you go.
Yeah. The question was, often people are scared within the workplace, especially as leaders, to engage in anything that's doing with mental health. And this is what when you put a human back into being a human, is that they actually have physical and mental and social health. So I loved how you talked about connectedness. I love that word. But if people that are listening today, or they're going out with this bit of information and people are scared about talking about their mental health and well-being, is that when you could also use that for that outsourcing, is to bring someone else in that can be able to help you?
Absolutely. And I guess we get accountants to do our tax, and we buy equipment from different suppliers, or maybe get our finance from a financier. So yes, using specialists to come in and provide that kind of assistance that perhaps we're too scared to, or most certainly really don't know where to begin. So as I mentioned, there's many different websites that have stuff about mental health. It's important that it's not just a tick and flick type of thing. I'll just read this and you'll be right. So have something that is sustainable in the workplace, that you can keep going back to, but it's also embedded into the culture, is really important, because mental health is going to be an issue yesterday, today and tomorrow. Regardless if we're in a downturn or in growth, it will always exist. So yes, bringing people into the business. And I know that there's a lot of people, and I did mention people locally and regionally that can assist. And I know actually Leanne actually does offer a service like that. Thanks, Leanne.
No worries, Deb. I was really enjoying that idea of people remembering that their employees are humans, and it's really important that I get to see the end result of when employers don't engage with that. So thank you, Debbie, for highlighting that.
Yep. I'll put your details on the Facebook chat, perhaps.
Okay, any other questions? Wonderful. Thank you so much for joining us for our May Lunch and Learn. We'll have another lunch and learn in June. I can't believe how quickly time is flying. Please watch our Facebook page for further information regarding topics. And we also have a lot of other programs and information sessions that we share on Facebook. So certainly is the place to stay in touch. Thank you so much for joining us today. Hope you have a really profitable and productive and good afternoon. And we'll see you next time.